Arab, and I'm pleased to be your moderator here today. And you'll hear in a moment or two that we've got an amazing panel here, that the expertise that we have in the room today, really spanning across policy, governance, thinking about partnerships, knowledge exchange, all of this, I think, from within our panel that you'll hear about shortly. So I think just to reflect on sort of today, really, today's been all around knowledge, connections, innovation, partnerships and technology, bringing all of that together. And today we're seeing how, or this session will see how we can then take that knowledge and expertise and convert that into action. And the challenges faced by countries, cities and communities are huge. We've heard today about that challenge, the climate challenge that are facing many communities around the world. And there is that need for innovative solutions, not just technology solutions, but solutions that can help scale, solutions that can help build the enabling environment, solutions that can help with governance, with innovative funding. So again, we're going to hear about some of these points from the panel shortly. So we have government representatives, we have city representatives and regional representatives and water specialists on this panel. So I'd like to, first of all, just introduce the panel. I'll go quickly across. And from my left, we have Tawfiq Shahid from UNDP from Yemen. So welcome, sir. And then next to him, we have a big support water and resources from Egypt. So thank you, sir, for joining again. Next, we have Commissioner Wahib from Lagos Ministry of Water and Environment and Resources. Next, we have Louise Ellis. I've been told to introduce her as Her Excellency from Arup, Associate Director, a great friend and helping to organize today's event. So welcome, Louise. And then finally, Julia Bernal, thank you very much for joining us from the Indigenous Environments Network. Thank you. Oh, sorry, from Angela, sorry, my mistake. Angela Kalug from Vice President from the Environmental Defence Fund. So thank you very much for joining. So what I'd like to do really is pose some questions to the panel, but also for the panel then to reflect on those questions, but also to share questions amongst yourself. If you feel that you want to answer somebody else's question, please indicate. I think it's going to be a way to share those questions and learning, but also I want to make this interactive as well. So once the panel have had a chance to answer some questions, be thinking about your questions that we can ask the panel. So we'll keep the conversation going. So what I'd like to do really is to start with a question really for the panel, but I suppose directed initially at sort of government representatives and state representatives and for His Excellency. Just really thinking about what are those really key challenges that you see for water in the SDGs and the need for innovation and thought leadership. And that question really to you, sir, His Excellency, Professor Hani, if you would like to give some reflections really on that question.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be back here again. The Water Pavilion is becoming our home at the COP, either 27 or 28, or hopefully also 29. And I thank you and I thank Siwi for taking the responsibility, and of course all the partners. And I know how much of effort you invest to organize this pavilion every year. In terms of challenges in the water sector, maybe today morning I was trying to tackle one of the most important challenges, not only for Egypt, but for the entire MENA region, is the increasing population in the region and the consequences on water scarcity. And water scarcity is the main or the first problem that's facing the Middle East, and I'm sure my colleague from Yemen will speak also in the same direction, because the region is really suffering from water scarcity. The problem of agriculture and the water consumption for agriculture is consuming in this region almost 70% of the water. In some of the countries, 80+% of the water resources is consumed for agriculture sector. So agriculture is also, and food security in the region is one of the main challenges in this. And also I can see climate change, and how to adapt to climate change is another challenge that facing, for example, a country like Egypt, you have climate change in the upper Nile, which means the water that comes to you, which is 98% of your resources, is impacted by the climate change outside your borders. So any change that happens in the flow upstream due to floods or droughts or whatever, increasing temperature is impacting Egypt as the last country in the system. Sea level rise is a problem. Heat waves is another challenge. We never had water shortage in the winter. Last year, when I just joined the ministry as a minister, we faced almost no rain in the country for the entire winter season, and heat wave or increasing in the temperature, which was really a big problem for the country for the first time ever in the winter, that you have to pump more water to supply the farm. So all of these are challenges that we can, of course, give an opportunity to my colleagues to express more challenges, and then we come back with the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Could I now come, I think, next to Commissioner Wahib for a question. Really, so you're based in Lagos with huge water challenges. What do you see really as the sort of key changes in climate policy that need to drive real action? And how are you supporting national climate plans to include water?
Thank you very much. As you all know, Lagos is a sub-national with about 22 million people and the smallest landmass in the country. Lagos is inhabited by the Atlantic and the lagoon. 1/3 of the landmass is water, and yet we have no pipe-borne water. As a state, we've identified this problem. Our key challenges goes beyond just the funding. It's about reorientation, about the role of water. Is it a social service or something people must pay even a token for? Yes, we need about 420 million gallons a day. We can barely give out 5 million gallons a day. So the problems have been identified. Now, what are we doing to solve those problems? Key is funding. But what's the total budget size of the state of Lagos? It's about $2.5 million a year. For water to go around the whole of the household of Lagos, the 420 million, we need about $2.1 million. So invariably, we need funding from outside. That is key for Lagos. But whilst we're doing that, we also believe a government should set up a clear policy on water. And that's why in the next few days, we should be signing the WASH policy, the water and hygiene and health sanitation policy for the state. We've been on this for the past few years, but we've been very decisive this time around to say we have to sign it. Once the governor signs up, he may even sign today. Then once we get to Lagos, we get it to go to the State Executive Council, so it becomes a part and parcel of what we have to implement. We've tweaked it over time. We've tweaked some laws to reflect this WASH policy, but without that WASH policy, people will not take the state serious with respect to this. So that's what we are doing as a state, as a government. We've seen the problem. We're also taking steps to remedy them, put infrastructure in place, put regulations in place, set up a regulatory commission for water, and these things have been in place. So now the WASH policy is the last of those items we must tick the box and then move forward with it.
Thank you very much. So my next question is to Tawfiq from the UNDP in Yemen. So really kind of reflecting on Yemen and the position there and your organization, how is UNDP bringing the best of innovation and new knowledge and technology into practice and scaling it from your perception?
Well, I really would like to start by talking about the conducive environment. And when we talk about the conducive environment, we talk about a national as well as a local level. Now, it's clear that Yemen has been struggling with conflict for quite some time, more than 8 years. We're talking about a conflict-torn country. We're talking about institutions that are almost collapsed. We're talking about almost 2 governments in place. We're talking about a chronic water crisis all throughout the country. And we were talking about state institutions without any official budget. We're talking about weak ability to enforce and enact laws and regulations. So this is at the national level. Now going down to the local level, we're talking about competition over scarce, competition among community groups over scarce resources, including water. We're talking about weak local institutions represented by local authorities. We're talking about increased demand for water, leading to escalation of local level conflicts among community groups. Within such an atmosphere, we as UNDP are trying to find a way out to support Yemenis, to enhance at least stability, peace building at the local level. I can say that we have come up with an innovative idea of enhanced bottom-up approach. We've been hearing lots of news about bottom-up approach, but we are talking about an enhanced bottom-up approach where we are working with local structures. And by the local structures here, I'm talking about water user associations at the community level. We are not only building their capacities. And as, those water user associations seem to exist whenever there is some funding. So they exist as long as there is some funding by by donors. Once the project ends, they are over. They don't have that means of sustainability. And that's what has created, among us, the interest to enhance those water user associations to be able to sustain after the project end. We built their capacities. We connected them with the local authorities. We also worked on an element which is income generation for water user associations so that they are able to provide services to the communities and at the same time continue to operate after the project end.
Yeah, thank you so much. My next question will be going to Louise Ellis. Really just, Louise, you're a water specialist working across the world. Are there any sort of lessons learned from where you see innovation and technology being applied, and maybe some reflections with your experience, please?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I think from what we've seen around the world, the key thing is building the collaborative relationship and partnerships in this space. As Tawfiq mentioned, it's really about the enabling environment for innovation, and a key part of that are the collaboration and partnerships. If I take the example of some of the work we've done with the city water resilience approach in 19 cities around the world, and the city water resilience approach aims to develop a water action plan at a city level, bringing in the kind of basin actors to bridge that urban-rural gap. The challenge, the opportunity that we see there is that by bringing all those together, we can develop that kind of collective understanding of what the water challenges are in the location and develop those kind of collaborative solutions and action plans in a way that they can progress towards being kind of bankable and financeable solutions, which is the second probably point I would make around the enabling environment for innovation. We often find that the funding is there for those kind of very well-developed solutions, but at that early stage where you've got that novel technology, it is much more difficult to access financing to trial and test some of those novel technologies. So that's probably the area where I could see where we could do more as a group of stakeholders.
No, thank you for those reflections and sort of building that sort of partnership approach really to take innovation forward. So thank you for those points. And so can I come to Angela? So Environmental Defence Fund. Can you give some reflections really on locally led innovation and what the lessons for the panel and for the audience might be?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to join this panel. In terms of some of the lessons that we have learned, I will just take the lead from the comments made on the case of Yemen. Those who are closest to the problem are the ones who must help drive the solutions. So being inclusive of those users is particularly important. Now, if I look at one of the areas that we prioritize, which is groundwater, this is a place where we have seen the need for that kind of inclusion and involvement of local stakeholders being the strongest. They're the ones who know best what is available and what is needed. And currently, given that we're using groundwater faster than we can replenish it, it means that we should be looking for solutions that would, and base it on knowledge systems that would enable us to think more sustainably. Now, in terms of coming back to the key lessons we have learned out of the work we've been doing is, if we're to be able to achieve progress in this space, we need, first of all, more data. Especially when it comes to groundwater, we need much more data. My colleagues usually say that when it comes to groundwater, it's like driving a car without a fuel gauge. We need much better understanding of what's available and how much is being used, and those who actually need that data most are those frontline users. And that's why one of the things we are trying to do is we're investing in like an open ET and groundwater accounting platform that will bring individualized data in the hands of these users. The second is that they need to be empowered to manage their own resources or to manage their own water. And what we have found is that it is a much more complex problem than, saying that's empowered is not as simple as that. It requires significant interventions, including policy reform at multiple scales. And if we want equitable inclusive solutions, then we need to be able to give that decision-making power back, to the users. And then the last thing that we have also learned through the work we've been doing is the importance of listening, the importance on drawing on the knowledge systems that exist. From what a colleague from UNDP has talked about, the complex situation you have like in a place like Yemen, they also have certain knowledge that would enable the tailoring of solutions to respond to this situation better. One example that we came across is where the government of Bangladesh used the feedback from local communities around, that led to them shifting the groundwater projects from white to red-brown sediment areas. And why is this? The local communities knew that the white sediment areas were also areas with arsenic pollution. And by bringing this information forward and their understanding, it will help, make decisions that will not only be favorable for the resource, but for the community that depends on the resources. So lastly, on the innovations that we're thinking about and that we're talking about, this can only be successful if they're co-created and co-implemented with the users. I think our view is that if we don't use them to empower frontline users, if we do not involve them in developing these innovations, or if we don't use those innovations to empower them, then we will not be able to, achieve our goals around sustainable development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Some great points. I think everybody's had the opportunity to speak, and I just wondered whether does anybody want to pick up from the panel first of all on any of the points that you've heard. I have some more questions, but you've covered a lot of ground there, and I've just taken some notes. The need for local solutions, the need to take the importance of data and as feeding this process, the appropriate sort of decision-making level, the need for collaboration and partnerships, and the need to co-create solutions. So I just wondered whether there was any brief reflections from the panel. So please.
Thank you so much. One thing which really strikes me is when you talk about the local knowledge. And within this context, the complex context we are working in Yemen, and the fact that it's very difficult to impose rules and regulations. The local knowledge and the local experience that people have becomes very much important to resolve water-related conflicts. It has been a major solution in the difficult time we are running through in Yemen right now, is that we resort to those local, the customary law that has been there for decades. And we were able to resolve so many issues and problems which relate to water that were not easy to resolve using the official system. Therefore, such system, the customary law is very much important, and sometimes it can go hand in hand with the main rules and regulations that the state have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to open up really to the panel. I'm going to ask the panel a question, and really around mechanism for funding innovation and skills development for climate solutions. Has anybody got any ideas about how do we incentivize that funding into that area to develop that, the skills and capacity and innovation? Would anybody like to have a go at that question? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My take on the funding is we need to think outside the box, and we need to get those that have the fund to see beyond just the short-term profit. Investment in water should be seen as a long-term investment and benefit that serves a multiple purpose. Yes, there are gaps, but beyond the gaps of infrastructure, then there is the gap of funding. Most banks will give you funding at double digits, or most grants will come at double digit rates, and then for a state in a developing continent like Africa, if there's no outside the box creative way of getting the funds to serve the purpose, we'll still come back here next year to discuss the struggles. For a state like Lagos, 22 million people, 420 million gallons a day, that's the need. With old, struggling waterworks infrastructure, we're saying to ourselves, even the budget of the state as it is today will only go, if you choose to fund it and get water to every household, that means you have to abandon that structure. Security will have to be sacrificed, waste management will have to go, education will have to be affected, health will have to be affected. So, where are we? We're at a point where we need to speak to ourselves, to say to ourselves, you can't tell me they are funding, but the only funding that goes to water is about 1%. So, creatively, we have to go outside the box, the regular box, and say, we want to be deliberate about this. The government has shown willingness. They've given you the framework. They've given you the regulatory framework. Then support them in a very deliberate and constructive way. The usual way would not work. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Please.
Yeah, thank you again. Innovation must not always be technological, as you just mentioned. Today morning, maybe we were talking about innovation of desalination for agriculture and food production. That might be innovation that costs real money and needs real investment. But legislation and governance could be dealt with in an innovative way that can minimize the cost and does not need big funding, but also can provide solution for the community. I give you an example. Land fragmentation in the agriculture sector is one of the most challenging problems in the country, that every farmer has a very small piece of land, and he has to rent the machines, he has to pump his own water, he has to buy the seeds. Then at the end, the production is very small quantity So he has to sell it to the first stakeholder, and then the first sell it to the second one. So the model, the business model of these small-scale farmers everywhere, not only in Egypt, is at risk, and it's not making profit. So water users associations, as it was mentioned, can consolidate these lands together, can bring these lands together, can bring the farmers as and the other stakeholders to plan together, to reduce the cost per farmer, because they have the same machine to work in the entire area. They will have one pump, one single pumping point. They have one. So, and that's what we did. We changed the water law in Egypt so that we can empower the water user associations, allow them to have a bank account, allow them to have election and select. So they have a framework, a legal framework, so that they can work together to minimize the cost. All what costs us first is to change the law. And that does not need big funding. And then help them, advise them, have training sessions, how to make elections, how to open a bank account, how to work together, how to plan for the same crop, how to have a common product, and then you can sell it to the biggest supermarket without having commissions between the different layers of stakeholders. So this is one of the approaches when it comes to governance and legislation. One very quick other comment about low-cost, low-tech. Our countries do not need the high technological solution. We cannot give the farmer an app that has a remote sensing connection to whatever type of data to calculate the crop water requirement and then irrigate. The farmers are not ready for this. And the system itself is not ready for that because it's not automated system. It's an open field agriculture. It's sometimes furrow agriculture. So we need low cost, low tech. One of the very interesting examples we had when we were trying to make the protection of the north coast of Egypt, which is threatened by the sea level rise, and the Nile Delta is threatened to be flooded by water, and 8 million people lives and business are at risk. There's the local knowledge, as it was said. The people told us, when you have this local bamboos as fence and then you structure it in a certain way, start harvesting the sand movement, then you start having a kind of a high area that really protected the people from the sea level rise. We started with the knowledge of the local community, empowering women to develop these fans from the local materials, and then today you cannot imagine the impact. 70 kilometers long are protected with a nature-based solution made by the local people. The idea is local, coming from the local people, and it works when you upscale it with a very little amount of funding so that we can allow them to bring their ideas and upscale it. So these are two ideas that not really need a lot of funding to fund the innovation. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think that's a really good point. What I liked about that was that, you know, by creating that enabling environment, then you can get this bottom-up approach. And I think the other panelists have reflected on that being kind of localized where that knowledge is and building on that by just providing that little bit of incentive. So Louise.
I guess I wanted to add to Commissioner Wahab's and His Excellency's comments around innovation in policy and innovation in financing, maybe from the opposite perspective, just to share the bottom up and the top down. And if we look at the top down in the policy space, I think there's considerable innovation that we can do in that space. At the moment, water is, if we're really honest with ourselves, it isn't fully reflected in the NDCs and the NAPs. And there's some, real opportunity to drive that into those national plans, particularly if we think of things like the water tracker, which is a partnership that Agua leads around providing guidance and self-assessment for countries on testing whether they fully incorporate water into their NDCs and NAPs. That provides that guidance and capacity building around developing kind of meaningful commitments. The second element is this idea of getting these national commitments into the local level, and we've seen examples like the work that has been done in Cambridge around locally determined contributions, and helping, reflecting that what gets measured often gets funded, by boiling down these kind of nationally determined contributions to a local level. It provides more ownership at a local level, more agency to act, and the ability in some ways not just to contribute to the nationally determined contributions, but also to watch it. Because we all know that the local level, the city level, the regional level is a level which is dynamic and that action can happen. The second element I wanted to talk to was the innovation in finance, which the Commissioner mentioned. I agree wholeheartedly with his comments. Innovation in finance is essential in the water space, and I think there's, it's also about building capacity to help cities and local governments and national governments to access some of the financing that's out there. Only 3% of recorded climate finance goes into water programs, and whilst there may be a number of funds out there, asking somebody from a national government or local government level to understand the range of finance that's out there, to look at the 30 plus funds that are available to them and work out which is the most suitable and which is the best for them, is a big ask. And so by providing support through things like the Resilient Water Accelerator, there's the opportunity to provide some of that guidance and support to allow local and national governments to access these funds more easily and with the appropriate kind of support.
No, thank you. Thank you. And I think that's a really good point. Maybe I could turn some of those points maybe into questions for the panel maybe to reflect on. So what you've mentioned there is that the funding there to take this innovation into action. So that's one point. That's a really interesting point. But also connecting those sort of nationally determined, sort of the taking those national commitments, and how do we take them to the local community? So we've been thinking about the bottom up. They have a contribution to those nationally determined contributions. How do we make that more visible? What are the mechanisms there? You heard about the water tracker and the good work that AGWA are doing on that. But I just wonder really maybe from the panel if you felt that you had any reflections there. How do we connect that national level to local action on the ground? Would anybody like to pick up on that question? It's a tough one.
Okay, so what we have, as I mentioned, we had a new Egyptian water law, and it has a certain structure that starts actually by the water user associations, as I said, because our system has the main river, the main canals, and then the secondary canals, and then the small tributaries that bring the water to the farmers. So we start from the water user associations at the lowest level that have already connection to the water system, and we go with the water system as you go from bottom up. And then we have the village council, which is mainly the main canal or the secondary canal, and then there is a committee at the level of main canal, and then there is a national council that head by the Prime Minister that takes the problems or the challenges discussed at the lower level with the farmers, and it goes up to the Prime Minister and the ministers who are involved with, like the Minister of Water, Minister of Environment, Minister of Agriculture, etc. So the people who are really have the power to make decisions, then the decision they go up, top down, and the challenges we have to escalate them or to take them from bottom up, and then we come up with decisions from the Prime Minister Council or the National Water Council. So that is the approach, how we link the farmers to the highest leading decision makers in the country.
Okay, thank you. Earlier, I did speak about the watch policy in Lagos. Now, let me give you a context. Nigeria is a federation with 36 states and a capital. So Lagos is one of the states, so we are a sub-national. But be a former capital, we have the highest number of people domiciled in the space, 22 million of the 200 million population of the country. So which means we have the smallest landmass and we have the 10% of the population there. So what we've done in the past few years is, yes, we've had struggles with the policies because water is not a national issue. It's on the concurrent list. So states can handle water-related issues. We've tweaked the laws over time. We've set up different agencies with respect to water. The most critical of them is the Water Regulatory Commission. So that will cut across public and private sector water usage. And the WASH policy ought to have been adopted. But that will also set the tone for those that want to invest and know the scope of work that is required, the scope of investment, the scope of intervention, and then how serious the government is. And I'm glad to tell you that my back there, we have the final draft of the WASH policy to be signed. Once that is signed, it goes to EXCO. This EXCO will ratify. Once the EXCO ratifies it, then it becomes a policy on water and hygiene and sanitation. Then that becomes what we now take to the grassroots. At the grassroots, we have the local government. We have 377 wards. The wards are the closest to the people from the state. So we now have to sell that with an advocacy to the wards. From the wards, it goes straight to the households. Then we'll take ownership using the local government structure. 57 local government chairmen are in Lagos, 377 wards. That means we have 377 councillors. We'll let them take ownership of that WASH policy as a policy on water and hygiene and sanitary. That is the path we're trying to tread going forward. From
Thank
top.
Thank
bottom.
you. Thank you. Would you-
Yes, I can add to that. Just to, add another, this is something which we have within the Yemeni system itself. We do have a coordination structure. It's in between, it's the National Water Resources Authority. It comes in between the national as well as the local. So it's in between here. And the good thing which we did is that we tried to connect the water user associations, which locates at the very local level, into the sub-national level where we have the National Water Resources Authority, which reports to the national level authorities represented by the ministries. The good thing is that, the role played by the National Water Resources Authority is that it also supervises and supports the water user associations through the coalitions that we have made out of these small structures within the local level. So that's the structure we have been working on to at least create that momentum and smooth communication from the bottom to the up and from up down to the local level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much for those for that sort of wisdom, really, from the panel. I'm going to have just one more question for you each, just one point, if I may. If there was one thing that we could take away as a reflection or a call to action or a point, taking innovation into action, what's the one thing that you'd recommend people to be thinking about, either in the room here or online? Just really quickly across, just one thing only.
I'll start with a sentence which His Excellency has said, and I really liked it very much. Innovation does not mean technological solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Got to be as quick as that.
Engaging the local communities. That would be really a key for solving many of the problems. So listen to them, work with them, and engage them.
And out-of-the-box thinking for a collaborative action for water.
I think for me, it's very similar to His Excellency's partnerships are really crucial to not only developing innovation, but arguably more importantly, scaling innovation and moving into action.
Thank you.
Data, data, data. We need information to know what we're doing. And we also need to be doing this not in silos. So we need to recognize that water cannot be addressed on its own. Water cuts across a lot of areas. So as we get that data, we also have to think about how water flows across, whether it's food, whether it's the agriculture, energy sector. So data, data, data.
Thank you. And thank you. Can I just thank our panel so much? I think the wisdom in that panel, I think, was amazing. And I think, and thank you so much for sharing those single points. Don't go anywhere, because I'm going to ask our sort of rapporteur to sort of close with a sort of reflective piece, really. So from our young water professionals. So can I invite Sophia to the podium? If you'd like to stay to hear a reflection, we've got a couple of minutes, or if you need to go, but Sophia?
Thank you so much. So we had a fruitful discussion here, and I would like to point out the main points shared by our speakers. We started talking about key challenges on water and SDGs. We talk about increasing population and water scarcity, especially in the Middle East. We also talked about the challenges that come with climate change. And second, we advanced talking about climate policy. And we said that it goes beyond funding. We have to include orientation and especially clear policy on water. And we also discussed about the lack of infrastructure and regulation. Later on, we talked about the different levels, so it's important to know the national challenges, but we should approach locally and guarantee stability and peace, because I would say that's key to enable the approach we were discussing. And yeah, we had that talk that our colleagues shared at the key point, that innovation is not it's only technology. So we have community innovation and other approaches that are also very important. And our colleague shared about the groundwater and especially the importance of data for that. And she highlighted that information is important for us to get and also to share after the project. And yeah, I also would say that there is finance, but the water programs, they are not getting there. So what should we do to get the access to this finance? And for this enabling environment, the importance of knowing the governance levels, because that's why we will go through the challenges. We will talk about advocacy and bottom-up approaches, and also coalition with small stakeholders. But would say engaging the whole system, building partnerships, and yeah, I would say that this was the important takeaways on this discussion, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia Karadi from the Water Youth Networks. Thank you so much for those reflections, and thank you again to our panel. And thank you online and in the room. One last round of applause for everybody, including yourselves, so thank you. Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Blimey. No, God. That's my name. So I said, in my mind. Were there many people online? Could they tell? What's the online quality? No, it's my godson's birthday. Godson's birthday, so printed up. I've got 65 messages. Has Jason been online? So good effort tonight.
What? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, who of you has the honor? Yeah, then
I'll put it in my pocket. Is that
and
the
then
mic?
just hold it a little bit.
Yeah.
Make a microphone. Just
If I put it there, then we're both on the mic. There's no testing.
we can do as many rounds as you want.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Then go.
Hi there. It's Martin and Louise, reported in from COP28. We're on the Water for Climate Pavilion. How was your day, Louise?
It was really excellent, Martin. Today we covered knowledge, innovation and technology. We explored a number of innovations in a water and climate showcase. We heard from cities and regions about what they're doing in relation to innovation in water and climate. And we heard about nature-based solutions, locally led adaptation, as well as hearing from our high-level panel about how to move innovation into action and scale the impact that we have. Martin, what did you hear today? What were the key lessons that you learned?
So today started with a really interesting group that was in the Innovation Mingle. So we had a series of bursts from innovators right across the spectrum, not just in technology but in other thinking. And what I was encouraged by was the number of sort of young professionals who were engaging at that level. So some of that thinking that was coming through it wasn't just about technology, but it was thinking about innovation has a social dimension, it has a planning dimension, it has a governance dimension. So all of these things need to be considered when trying to move the dial for water. How about you?
I think for me, one of the great sessions was the session that the cities and regional governments held. We heard about how cities and regions are a dynamic scale to drive climate action. We also heard about the need to bridge the gap between national commitments and local plans, and how we can turn the dial on that. Particularly, we heard about the importance of measuring, because what gets measured often gets funded, and therefore setting out some adaptation goals is something that the panelists felt was a key thing to move forward.
Well, I was really encouraged that we had a real spectrum in the audience and on panels from ministers, from commissioners at the regional level, from cities and catchments, from technology, SMEs, real spectrum there that we're considering water from different dimensions. And my kind of takeaway really needs that level of communication, collaboration and partnership to really move innovation forward. It's not just going to be done by a small group of people. To get that innovation to scale is a communal effort. It needs action right across that value chain.
I think for me, the final panel of the day, they covered one of the key points that we should raise now and discuss, and that was the point around financing. The great quote we had today is that the water challenge is not just about the quality and quantity of water, but it's also about the quality and quantity of finance. Only 3% of reported climate finance goes into the water space. There's a need to increase that, but also to provide the capacity and support to cities, regions and national government to access that climate finance and move forward their solutions.
Yeah, so that finance is important to move to take that innovation to scale. So we also heard that actually you need finance to think about investment into that innovation to help in the technology readiness levels that we heard about this morning. So taking them from 1 to 9 for into implementation. along that pathway, from a technology point of view, there's lots of ways to lose your way, in effect, so lose that the value of that innovation. So funding's important. It's important to collaborate in this space and to have a kind of shared narrative. So today's been really important to bring that diverse community together and align really to start thinking about and solving not just the SDGs, but try to understand how we take the nationally determined contributions and then how do we actually bring them into thinking at the city scale or regional scale, so-called locally determined contributions. Innovation in that space, to scale across that sub-regional into national scale. So thinking about, you mentioned nature-based solutions. So nature-based solutions is a really good example that so these types of interventions can have both a very positive climate-friendly mitigation effect, but also from an adaptation effect. So you're getting twice the benefit from that type of innovation. So really important.
Yeah, the nature-based solutions panel was a fantastic opportunity to explore what the enablers are that are needed to scale nature-based solutions. We covered a myriad of enablers, particularly around areas such as the governance and partnerships around nature-based solutions, as well as some of the technological solutions that are needed as well. Overall, a fantastic day, Martin.
Yeah.
We've heard from such a range of speakers, and it's been an honour and a privilege to bring the sessions together. Thank you to Sylvie for giving us this great opportunity.
Agreed. Thank you, Siri, so much. And thank you if you scale to all the other partners as well. So I think that also speaks to the testament of the power of partnerships to solve these really tricky climate resilient issues. So thank you.
Awesome. You have to do it over again because we have to film it this way.
No.
No.
Get out.
Yeah.
Get out. Why have you done this to us, Danny?
Sorry.
No way, I'm not.
That's why I was like.
It's one cut only. That's what I thought you.
Well, at least
Just
it's
turn
fun.
it. Just turn it on. You
Can
do
we
it.
say less? How many minutes are we at?
We were at 5 minutes. You can
Okay,
say much less.
let's just say less.
No, we're going to say more now, so you've heard it now.
No.
I've totally forgotten. My brain's gone blank.
Let's just quickly run through this.
No, I can't do it again. No. It's one shot
Can
only.
you just cut our feet like you've done it landscape?
Really, you must be able to do that. Don't listen to. What is that? Because that's the format on your.
Yeah. It's also no, yeah, a bit, but we hear you much clearer because you have the mic so close, and so it means it's much more muffled. You can do a shorter one, really short one.
So if I hold that there, and we just.
Yeah, put it there. Put it like there, and you're on it, but it might be a bit.
Does that work?
I hope that should work.
Can we just decide, are we going event by event, or can we just...
Terrific. I mean, we didn't end up going by that really in the end.
No.
You don't need to go sharing around everything. I think if you just go key takeaways.
These are just key takeaways.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me do this.
So sorry for that. Okay.
Hi, I'm Martin Schuler from Arab,
I'm Louisa Samara.
and we had the pleasure of co-hosting today's Climate Pavilion on knowledge, innovation, and technologies.
A big thank you to the partners who created the day with us, the Environmental Defence Fund and the American University in Cairo.
So we started the day with a innovation mingle. So quite early we heard from 6 or 7 innovation bursts right across the spectrum of innovation, not just technology, but thinking about innovation in thinking, innovation in governance, thinking about innovation in finance. So it was really interesting to have that as a framing, so thinking about innovation in and around. And that really set the tone, I think, for the day moving forward. And it was also refreshing to hear from those young innovators. So they're bringing new ideas into the sector.
The future's certainly bright in that space. The second event of the day, we heard from cities and regions about their approach to water also heard about the need to bridge the gap between the local scale and the national scale. We heard about how nationally determined contributions are fed down into the local scale and how there's a need to work harder in this area. A particular quote for me was that what gets measured often gets funded, and therefore there's a real need to build those locally determined contributions so that we can ratchet down on climate action.
Yeah, and just building on that, so a couple of the panels that we've had today kind of reflected on that sort of locally led adaptation, that bottom-up approach. But we also heard from ministers today about the recognition of that and providing the enabling environment so that we can have partnerships at a very local level, making meaningful interventions to build urban water resilience and effectively come up with climate-friendly solutions that fit for their local environment. So that was really encouraging, seeing that spectrum all the way from the national actors right the way down to the local actors.
I think the other bit for me that stood out today was discussions around financing. I didn't know coming in today that only 3% of recorded climate finance goes into water programs. I heard a great quote, which was the water challenge is not just about quality and quantity of water, but about the quality and quantity of finance. There's a need to really turn, pardon the pun, the taps on in relation to climate finance in the water space. I think there we also heard about the need to provide the capacity and the support to cities, regions and national governments for accessing that climate finance. And also making sure that we present our investment cases in the language of the financial institutions.
Yeah, agreed. And just sort of reflecting again on where the power of the youth bringing new ideas in. We had a debate during the course of the afternoon with young professionals on the panel. So the debate was around the provocation, where that we've got all the innovation we need, we just need to get on and scale it. And it's quite interesting that we took a vote at the beginning from the audience and those online, and the majority actually agreed with that provocation. The panel did a great job, and we took another vote, and that moved the dial completely the other way. So there was a strong disagreement that actually we had all the ideas actually to move forward to for SDG 6. So more innovation required, I think, was the summing up, I think, from that session.
We also had a great panel on the enablers for nature-based solutions. We discussed in that panel a range of different enablers that are needed, particularly discussing things like the need for partnerships, given that nature-based solutions span water, food, health, and the opportunities that they have there. We discussed in that panel around the need for a total value approach to nature-based solutions when comparing them to the kind of traditional solutions, as well as covering some of the technological and context-specific examples of nature-based solutions.
And just sort of building on that, the nature-based solutions, what I took away from that session is that just thinking about those interventions done at the very local level, so thinking about how they can actually positively impact nationally determined contributions, so making that link from locally determined contributions all the way back up to nationally determined contributions. And nature-based solutions have the benefits of actually working in terms of mitigation for climate change, but also adapting for climate change. So you get multiple benefits from nature-based solutions, and thinking how we can adopt them at the city scale.
Overall, a really fantastic day, and it's been a real honour and privilege to curate the Lighting Innovation and Technology Day. A big thank you to Sui for hosting us and the pavilion today.
Yeah, it was great. And if you just pan across to all the other, this is real power, the power of partnership, really. So you can see all those partners involved in the curation of the Water for Climate Pavilion, and it's been a real honour today and a privilege to be part of that discussion and conversation. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, I relieve you of your burden. Thank you so
very
much.
much.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm just gonna scoot this.
Yeah, sure.
Alright.
We can. Is that
I-
enough? Because we probably won't utilize the. Is it possible to see through the camera the view as well? Or what they have. Yeah. They're not.
Yeah, this is fine.
Thanks. I'm retiring, reading it now. Is more distraction. Is the link the live stream link on our website? Yeah, so all of mine, that one's a little tucked away. I'm sorry, I'll post that right now. Yeah, no, it's really come forward a little bit. I mean, we could even like.
You can go in front of this.
Yeah. Who is it for?
The thing
Back is a little tucked, I had it like drafted with the video.
Oh, no, we only have that microphone.
I made the mistake last time. Which was
Headset.
Oh no.
But otherwise, you just use that one or the other one. That's why that we have that as much of the microphone. Then actually, not really. I mean, I guess you could.
It's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine. We're
okay.
already preparing for consecutive translation for the one speaker, so it's fine. They'll just use the same mic.
All right. Let me just see what we got.
That's what it's with. It does, right? Like it flows. Okay. So I think I have the person's email. It's the same person. Candy, Shirlene, Camila, Jack, JC, Tom. Yeah. Do you need a notepad? No, I'm good. I have one. I just want to use my laptop. I didn't know until I saw. Oh yeah, we posted that. With the alfalfa. I didn't even. No. I didn't even notice until you were up there. I didn't even notice until I listened to the video.
Hello, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing.
It's day 30.
Hello.
Julia, when we first got here, your picture was on the screen. I know. I thought you like missed the panel or something. No, because I was supposed to be like on this one, but then we swapped it out. Did you go to the other one? Like it was literally ending when we got here. I'll show you. I'll take a look. The first one was good, and then you started looking away, so I didn't not. You have to go to the bathroom. You know you have to go down. No. I was not gonna bother with that. I do need water though. I was just like slept from that date. Yeah, I see. Last night, but I just thought you had like an awkward time, and I was like, I don't get to appreciate this lady. I was like, yeah, she's really why was she? Thank you. I think it was when you were like, no, like away, and then you like looked right at me. I'm like, okay, this is nice. Talking about the difference between pictures and you're like, oh yeah, how far are we?
We're just thinking about, because we don't want to pass the mic around all the time, if two people would want to wear a headset to be mic'd up all the time.
Okay.
We just
I'm moderating. Do you want me to wear one
Yeah,
or not?
that'd be great.
I really like this.
Okay.
Hello.
We can do it however you like. If you want to sort of headset or just pass it
Would
around.
you like to have a headset or no?
I don't know. Earlier, two other side events, I had that option. The headsets picked up sound better and the voice was better than the mic. I don't know if it's just a battery situation.
So it's up to you. It's personal preference.
We've
Yeah?
only used the handheld mic before and it worked fine.
Does it look weird passing it around?
Not really, it's just a personal preference how you would like to have your panel.
There is a situation in this one where we have translation.
Okay.
So they should probably do that.
Okay.
And they're not here. I mean, here they are.
Okay.
Shrillini.
There's enough room for all of you on.
Yeah, no, we're talking about headsets versus microphones.
No, we're doing consecutive translation. They don't.
Okay.
Handheld?
Keep it handheld.
We translate at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So one of them could probably wear like Shrillini could wear a headset while she's speaking, and then Camila could just be holding.
Camilo. Camilo.
Okay. Over there.
Yeah, no.
Sit next to me. I need translation myself, so I'll wait for her to.
Okay.
Are they recording this so that it can be used?
Yes, we're also streaming. There's a link. And recording.
Yeah. Let me stream on YouTube and.
What he's asking is for someone to wear a headset, so I thought maybe either Camila or
They don't need it.
We can also go only with the microphone, whenever you prefer.
so that we're not having to pass the
Oh.
microphone back and forth.
They only have one microphone.
I know that. But they have a headset. So if she's holding the mic and Camila has a headset, then she can just.
When you were asking about
That's what I'm
headsets, you
saying.
have headsets available, is that what you said?
Yeah, he has
Yeah.
two of them, so she needs to. I'll ask her now.
I'll be like that.
updated by them, just a few updates on by them. I updated the document as well.
On the document,
As well,
so
yeah.
I can read it off the document and it's updated.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was gonna have to switch back and forth.
No, no.
So the other thing is, consecutive means she'll speak and then you'll speak and then she'll speak and then you'll speak. Okay, so
Como que era consecutiva, assim, é para...
right, and so what they're asking is, instead of passing a microphone back and forth, can you wear a headset? That way she can just hold this.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Because it saves us time.
Yes. So where did our tech person go? Jack. He's the only one missing. Jack. My backup is Larissa. I'll make her come up here and talk about Australia.
The other one that works on water is Julia.
Jack's not here. Oh, there he is. Kidding. Yes. So they would like to. This is Camila. She's like on tour. And so she can wear a headset so that they don't have to pass by someone. You have to go back and get mic'd up.
Again.
How you going? Is one of the best to send? Because that will be like two here in. Because we're the panel. We're the panel. So we're sitting in order. You're last.
Seeing West and how like the switch. I'm here in the place that people see.
Do you want anything on stream?
Yes, Daisy. Can we put the poster on the screen? You can get it.
I have one.
But where, like, what's your stuff? What do you want? Oh, the poster?
Yes.
It's a portrait size.
Can you talk to him? I don't know what name that is.
I'm telling you
Talk to the tech person.
I'm telling you a portrait's not gonna look good on a wedding.
And we have 10 minutes each.
So you have 10 minutes each. You want this one? 9.
There's 13.
Rita has 13 because it's consecutive translation.
We don't need to go to the
You don't know. Just stay seated at the same time. And I'm gonna just sit in the middle so that the interpreter's on the end and it's set. And this is a better angle for me. I'm sorry, I'm so tired. I know, but and so there is one more headset available. If you would, Camila's gonna use one. And then there's a headset as opposed to passing this around if you would prefer. So that you would turn it on and just speak instead of holding this in front of your face. Is that something you want to do or no? It doesn't matter. Which means what?
I'm going to use the headset this time.
It probably will sound better,
Yeah.
be better quality. So Tom, you just have to go to the back and get it hooked up. We have 5 minutes. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Is this thing on?
And this mic is okay.
Welcome, welcome. We'll
Okay,
be
clean.
starting in 4 minutes. So please come over to our
Clean
water
sound you have.
pavilion
Clean sound from here. Okay.
and listen. So whoever's like nearby in the hallway.
No, you say however. But it's good. So we have buffers. Okay, so how long? Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. So, I'll give you signs of at 5 minutes, 3, 2, 1, to show how much time you have left. Okay. And I'm being more flexible. So, I would like based how the conversation is going. If I need another minute or two, it's my priority to language use is my that's the temp that I can do. Okay, so.
All right, we're about to get started as soon as Tom gets mic'd up.
No. Not. No. No. It's not me. Yeah, perfect. It's not me, I'm not here. Yes. Figment.
Testing.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Test.
Hello. I just want to make sure you let me know when you're ready.
If this doesn't work, then I'm gonna quickly go
Get the
to
mic.
a mic handheld.
Testing, translation, yeah.
Yeah.
Testing.
Is mine working?
Check mic, 1 2, check.
Right away, I get a sign that that's not gonna work. So disconnect.
Check mic, check mic, check mic.
Check mic. Maybe it doesn't agree with Bell's palsy. Check mic. Check mic. Check mic. Can you hear me? Okay. Check, check, check.
Keenan. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this beautiful evening here in the United Arab Emirates during COP28. Today's panel is False Solutions versus Real Solutions to the Climate Crisis. Indigenous water protectors defending our livelihoods, lands, and territories. This will be an intergenerational discussion with our Indigenous water protectors on how the climate crisis and false solutions to climate change are impacting our livelihoods, lands, and territories. Real solutions to the climate crisis, rooted in Indigenous worldviews, values, and our relationship with water will be presented. So I'd like to introduce myself as your moderator. So Dosha Maraguts, Marashimaa Ishuyahits. In my Heradza language, I said, hello relatives. My name is Eagle Woman. My English name is Candy White, and I am Mandan, Heradza, and Arikara. from so-called North Dakota and the United States. Very honored and privileged to be here with such an esteemed panel of my colleagues. Tonight we are going to begin speaking with a beautiful, beautiful person who I've had the privilege to meet some years ago in the work that we've been doing. Shrilini Oliveira da Silva of the Huniqui Indigenous Territory in the Amazon in Brazil, and mother of Chief Ninua Inu Hiniqui Jr., is an Indigenous activist and has a PhD in plant production from the Federal University of Acre. Shrilini was recently accepted into the postdoctorate program at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver. Shrilini has been working professionally with 16 Indigenous peoples of Acre and with Indigenous populations in voluntary isolation and recent contact. Please join me in welcoming Shrilini.
Olá, boa noite a todos. Cumprimento a todos os originários destes e de outros territórios e me apresento com o meu nome em minha língua, Maspan Huniquin, dado por meus ancestrais.
Greetings to all native peoples of this land and other territories. I introduce myself with the name Maspa Huniqui, given to me by my ancestral leaders.
Os Huniquin e os demais povos indígenas, eles têm uma relação direta com a água. Nós temos a água como um espírito vivo e que faz parte não só da manutenção básica das nossas vidas, da nossa alimentação ou do nosso transporte nos rios, mas também da nossa espiritualidade. Pois consideramos um Diuxin Xarabu, que é um espírito bom para os Huniquin, e traz a mensagem ao povo Huniquin que há séculos viveu de maneira nômade, transitando entre territórios, sem contato com outros povos, mas que teve uma invasão colonial nos seus territórios por grandes seringueiros para a exploração da borracha e que, por isso, necessitou se fixar em 12 diferentes territórios na Amazônia brasileira.
The Huniqui and other indigenous peoples have a direct relationship with water, tied not only to the basic maintenance of our ways of life, use for food production, river travels, and more, but also to our spirituality. We consider water a living spirit, a Jushibu Sharabu, a benevolent spirit that carries messages to the Huniquin people. For centuries, we have lived nomadically, without frequent contact with other human communities. But due to the colonial invasion of our forests, through violent rubber plantations, we had to settle in specific territories to ensure the well-being of our families.
Desses territórios é o território em que vivo, Hanã Bariá Namaquiá, no rio Envira, Feijó, Acre, que significa povo que vive em terra firme, às margens do rio.
One of these territories is where I reside, René Bariá Namaquiá, on the Envira River in the municipality of Feijó, state of Acre in the Amazon, Brazil. The name of the territory in Hachaquin means firm land with abundance, a people living on the riverbanks.
A relação do povo Huniquin com a água sempre foi profunda. Ela, para nós indígenas, é sagrada. A sua cor, os seus movimentos, os animais e os espíritos que nela habitam refletem a espiritualidade do nosso povo e carregam mensagens que nos fortalecem.
The relationship of the Huniquin people with water has always been very profound. Water is sacred to us. Its color, movements, the animals and spirits within it reflect our spirituality and carry messages to strengthen us.
As cerimônias tradicionais realizadas pelo povo Huniquin, como o uso do nishpã, da ayahuasca, do rapé e de outras medicinas tradicionais, nos levam à miração. E isso faz com que nos conecte com seres e com nossos ancestrais que já não vivem mais nesse planeta. Após o encerramento das nossas cerimônias que acontecem à noite, ao despertar do sol, ao nascer do sol, nós tomamos banho com as águas dos nossos territórios. E essa água lava a nossa espiritualidade, tiram os Jushin Chakabo, que são os espíritos ruins, as doenças, tiram todas as energias negativas. Porém, já não conseguimos mais, após as nossas cerimônias, tomar banhos com águas puras.
Traditional ceremonies happen during the nights using nishipan, ayahuasca, rapé, and other medicines. The ceremonies leads us to visions, taking us to the highest planes of our traditions, allowing us to see the world through the eyes of our ancestors. At sunrise, for the closing of the ceremonies, it's very important that we go and bathe in sacred places with pure water to cleanse our thoughts, body, and renew our spirits, washing away all Jushin Chakabu, the evil spirits, the diseases, the negative thoughts. This bath with ancient traditional plants, they teach us and provide guiding thoughts for our work, harvests, hunting, and fishing, and it hasn't been possible anymore.
Devido aos impactos da emergência climática vivido pelos povos indígenas da Amazônia, temos sofrido com as secas extremas. Somente nesse ano, ficamos desde maio até novembro sem chuva em nossos territórios. Essa já é a maior seca vivida pelos povos indígenas da Amazônia.
Due to the climate emergency faced by the indigenous peoples of the Amazon, we have suffered from extreme droughts. Just this year, we experienced a lack of rain from May to November. We can no longer rely on the natural cycles of rains and summer. This is definitely the most severe drought we ever experienced.
Não conhecemos mais os ciclos naturais da chuva e do verão. Estamos próximos de um grande deserto na Amazônia. Viajar em nossas pequenas embarcações pelos rios já não é mais possível, devido ao baixo nível de água. Caminhamos com nossos filhos por dias nas calhas dos rios que hoje parecem estradas secas. As mulheres indígenas sofrem diariamente com a falta de água. Fazem longas caminhadas com crianças para captar água nas fontes para beber. E como essas fontes já estão escassas, em baixa quantidade, com nosso conhecimento ancestrais, deixamos de retirar o suficiente e tiramos da natureza apenas o suficiente e de forma consciente.
We are on the brink of a desert in the Amazon. Traveling in our small boats is becoming increasingly difficult as the rivers have low water levels. We walk for days with our kids in the riverbeds that now resemble dry roads. Indigenous women suffer daily from water scarcity, undertaking long journeys with their children to collect water to drink. They take only small amounts, because guided by the ancestral knowledge, they know that they must derive from nature only what we need, so that we can rely on it for the coming days.
Além disso, a mineração ilegal tem poluído as poucas águas que nos restam e nos obriga a consumir água e peixe contaminado com mercúrio, ferro e resíduos da mineração. Não existe mais água pura nos nossos territórios. O impacto disso na saúde de mulheres, crianças e anciões aumentou muito nos últimos anos, com doenças com vírus, bactérias e de origem hídrica.
Furthermore, illegal mining pollutes the remaining waters that we have, forcing us to consume water and fish contaminated with mercury, iron, and mining waste. There is no more pure water in these territories. The impact on health of women, children, and elders has increased significantly in the recent years, with hydric-originated diseases, viruses, and bacteria.
Nas grandes discussões do clima, como a COP, não temos visto os países chamados desenvolvidos preocupados com a preservação da água. Temos observado soluções enganosas para a preservação da floresta e das águas, sem considerar as práticas e soluções ancestrais apresentadas pelos povos indígenas como fato de conservação desses ambientes há milênios.
In the broader climate discussions, we haven't seen the so-called developed countries genuinely concerned about water preservation. We've witnessed false solutions for preserving forests and water, ignoring the practices and solutions presented by indigenous peoples who have indeed conserved these environments for thousands of years.
O superaquecimento das águas nos preocupa e chegou ao ponto de peixes e botos da Amazônia não suportarem e serem extintos dos nossos rios. Isso tem levado à fome em nossos territórios e aumentado os problemas sociais e a desigualdade que já enfrentamos.
The overheating of the waters has reached the point where fish and dolphins can't endure and are becoming extinct in our rivers. This has led to hunger in our territories, exacerbating the social issues that these peoples have faced for centuries.
Espero que na COP28 as partes se conscientizem que existe uma relação direta dos povos indígenas, da ancestralidade, da sua cultura e da sua tradição para a manutenção da vida, e que os impactos da atividade de mineração ilegal, do desmatamento e do avanço do comércio de carbono, associados a falsas soluções, têm impacto direto sobre os povos indígenas e as comunidades tradicionais.
I hope that in COP28, the parties become aware of the direct relationship between water and the culture, tradition, and sustenance of indigenous peoples. The impacts of illegal mining, deforestation, and the advancing of carbon trading associated with false solutions have affected indigenous peoples and traditional communities a lot.
Durante a implantação do programa RED Plus na Amazônia brasileira, tive a oportunidade de coordenar uma das frentes e percebi a ineficiência da abordagem que não reduz a emissão de carbono. E, em sua maioria, são projetos desvirtuados que não beneficiam os verdadeiros protetores da floresta, da água e da biodiversidade. Desde então, passei a integrar essa rede que trabalha com ambientalistas contra as falsas soluções.
During the implementation of the RED Plus program in the Brazilian Amazon, I had the opportunity to coordinate one of the divisions. I realized the inefficiency of this approach, which does not reduce carbon dioxide emissions and mostly consists of misguided projects that do not benefit the true protectors of the forest, of the water, and the biodiversity. Since then, I have joined environmental networks against false solutions.
Os povos indígenas que hoje têm seus territórios ameaçados têm sofrido perdas e danos irreparáveis por conta da emergência climática. É importante lembrar que não adianta somente proteger as terras indígenas, devemos preservar a floresta ao entorno, pois essas atividades estão diretamente ligadas a falsas soluções climáticas e impactam as nascentes dos nossos rios e as formas em que vivem os nossos povos.
Indigenous peoples whose territories are now under threat have suffered immense losses and damages due to climate emergency. It is crucial to emphasize that protecting indigenous lands alone is not sufficient. We do not preserve the forests if we do not preserve the forests around them. Activities related to false climate solutions directly impact river sources and the way of life of these peoples.
Para encerrar, eu destaco que soluções verdadeiras de preservação e conservação ambiental devem incluir os conhecimentos tradicionais dos povos indígenas, respeitando sua biodiversidade e tradição. E lembro, quando um território é invadido, os corpos de mulheres, a nossa espiritualidade também é violada.
So to end by the end of my time here, I emphasize that real solutions for environmental preservation and conservation must include the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples, respecting their diversities and traditions. And I remind you all that when our bodies are violated, also our spiritual body is violated together with our body that is the Mother Earth that has been violated.
Thank you so very much. Please give it up for Sherlini. So much. She traveled all this way and has, been amazing and speaking out and been a voice for her people. And it's hard to leave home, but It's amazing that she's been able to do this for us, so thank you so much. We will now move on to our next speaker, Jack Collard. Jack Collard is a proud citizen of the Noongar Nation with cultural ties that span from the pristine beaches along the coast of Wajut country through the wetlands of Borloo over Katmora to the granite outcrops of Baladong Buja, which is home to the Mongar tree. And I just realized that I was going to let him say all of that, and I forgot. So I hope I didn't say it too bad, and apologies to my Australian friends that are here. Jack's servitude in his nation has found him as the role as the executive director for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander International Engagement Organization, which seeks to connect Indigenous nation states to Indigenous nation states across the globe. Weaving a web of interconnectedness and interdependency, this network aims to leverage the networks in respective homes to realize the necessity for Indigenous peoples to become self-determined from the colonial powers that be. Jack is also an alumni of the Indigenous Environmental Network's Fall Solutions training program, and as such uses his voice to warn about the dangers of green colonialism in its many shapes and forms. Please join me in welcoming Jack.
Yambayan, balapin mort wa, balapin mort, balapin bibring alaking buja wa, balapin damangka mamangka kawin karajan nga balapin nidja. Nganyang kwel Jack Collard, ngay borang burpuk balwakin burbuk kawin karajan ba. My name is Jack Collard. I come from a place in the southwest of so-called Western Australia. My ancestral and cultural ties are to the Wajut lands of the Noongar Nation, the sandy coastal plains home to the swampy wetlands, and I also got claims to the east, Baladong Mrungada country, over the Black Hills. So for everybody here that doesn't understand the situation within Australia, 200 years ago, before them Nyitiyang, those white devils, they came, there was 500 nations that lived in peace. Within my nation, there was 16 clans, and there was balance. There was that interconnectedness. There was that interdependency. There was respect. We don't have formations in the lands of castles. We didn't create weapons of mass destruction. It's because we respected one another. But we also understood the dangers of upsetting the spirits of the land. And for us Noongars, one of the most important of all of those spirits are those rainbow serpents that carve the land. And they carve the land to sustain the life in some of the places where it's hardest to sustain life. Because as you go east out to Baladong Mrungada country, it gets hot in the summer. It gets so hot that it's too hot for rivers to flow above the ground. And so those rainbow serpents, when they traveled, they carved out the paths under the ground that connected all of these nations. And their travels are immortalized in the songs that we sing. The secrets of these waterways and the locations of these waterways were for us to keep, because it was our responsibility to keep them. In Baladong Mrungada country, we have these things called ngama holes. And these ngama holes are these holes in that hard granite rock we call boya. And these are the places where, in our country, the male rainbow serpent, who we call waggle, he poked his head out. And these ngama holes are our responsibility as we traverse from the coast in the summer, and then we move east under the cover of that waggle, of that Karadamrunda, the Black Hills, as the wind comes from Antarctica and gets too cold to be in those swampy wetlands. As we move east, we rely on these ngama, and we will travel in our bands of our clans, of our families, And our responsibility was to leave those water holes in a better place than we found it. We would cover them up with rocks to reduce the condensation, and also to prevent animals from falling in. And if they did fall in, it was our responsibility to clean them as soon as possible. Before we would take the water, we would pay our respects, and we still do, to that waggle, because without waggle, we are nothing. Without that waggle, there is no life. Western science acknowledges that for over 120,000 years, we've been caring for that water, caring for the land, caring for each other more successfully than any one group. And then the white people came, the Nyityang, the white devils. They came from a different culture, a culture of fear, a culture of scarcity. And they came to this place of abundance. And they thought that all them smells that they smelt on them ships, all them feelings that they felt, they thought it was worth it. They thought that they hit the jackpot. And my great-great-great-grandfather, Yalaganga, he was the leader of the Muru clan in this land of abundance. And he put pity on these sick, stinky white people that got off these boats. He showed them fresh water sources. And in return, they got their guns, they got their sabers, and they went on a killing spree. They massacred us at Kartagarrap, the place of the spider. They chased us to Lake Monga, Garalop, the place of fire, and that place of fire got turned into a place of mourning. And we were lucky to survive. And we found shelter over them Black Hills. And as we went over to them Black Hills, we found ourselves in slavery. We found ourselves breaking our laws, because what the Nyityang they did is they went to those Ngama and they poisoned them all. They poisoned them all so that we could not sustain lives on our own. Our law is we never kill a tree. We'll take a limb, we'll cut out a little bit, but we'll let him live. And we were forced into this slavery. And out of Balangurungara country, the wheat belt, 93% of that native vegetation has been cleared for broadacre farming. We have oral history of my grandfather saying, no, you need to leave a tree here, you need to leave a tree there. Otherwise that topsoil is going to go. You got no windbreaks. And now what we're seeing is that topsoil is blowing all the superphosphates, all the artificial chemicals into our belia. Our belia is our river, our belia is our navel. And the salt is rising. And I feel like us Indigenous peoples in this space right here are in a similar position. They've taken our water away. They've taken our food away. They've taken our sovereignty away in every respect. And now there are crumbs. There are crumbs that are being put on the table. And they're saying, hey, if you want these crumbs, the only way you're going to get it is if you play by our game. If you give up your sovereign rights, if you commodify the sacred, if you participate in these carbon markets that make absolutely no sense at all. And I think everybody deep down knows that they make absolutely no sense at all, but these crumbs, they're powerful. Just like a culture of fear, just like a culture of scarcity. And that's what sent those Wajalas, those Nyityang on them boats all that way in hopes that they can get some safety. And I know there's people here that are specialists in this, and they'll be able to speak to this further than me. But to wrap this up, I want to reflect on a story that my brother over here, Sterling, shared of his grandfather, Crowfoot. When he was sitting around the fire and he grabbed a piece of paper, some money, and he put that in the fire. And then he grabbed that boja. He grabbed that dirt, and he threw that in the fire. that paper's going to go, but our Mother Earth remains. There are many influences. There's many reasons. There's many rationalizations to make the decisions that we do. But we must reflect on these impressions that we are leaving, because they will reflect on that. Because we will be those ancestors one day. And these stories that we tell, the lives that we lead, that's all that we leave.
Give it up. Give it up. Everybody just join me and take a deep breath in. Breathe out. Because we're sharing our realities here. And they're hard to hear. But we speak truth to power. It's why we're here. I just want to reflect on that. And I'm very appreciative of everyone here sharing our stories the way we are. And I am getting a bit emotional, as I often do, because of the connections that we have together for the way we've been impacted. I would like to introduce our next speaker here, JC Chiblo. JC is Anishinaabe from Garden River First Nation, Ontario. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in biology and a Master's of Environmental Studies. JC's master research was conducted in her community, where she brought together youth, community leaders, and knowledge keepers in a workshop style gathered focused on climate action throughout an Indigenous food sovereignty lens. JC started with Indigenous climate action in 2020 and has worked as the community engagement lead and toolkit lead, where she supported the creation, dissemination, and implementation of ICA's toolkit and climate leadership program. Currently, she sits as the Education Training Manager, where she will continue to support ICA's development of education and training program materials. And she's just an awesome youth, an amazing person. So please join me in welcoming JC.
Anim Bojo, Minande, Beneshi, Quen, Dishkaz, Gitaganzi, Bean, Donjaba, Gigo, and Dodam, Anishinaabe, Quen, Dao, Port Moody, Megwa, and Dinda. So hello everyone, my name is JC Chiblo. I'm Anishinaabe from Garden River First Nation, which is located in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory in so-called Canada, or near the Great Lakes and Anishinaabe. Today, I'm very honored to be on this panel of really amazing leaders and great speakers. It's really just an amazing opportunity to be able to share my reflections and my understandings of the teachings that have been passed on to me through the experiences that I will share and the stories that I will share with you all today. But before I get into that, I was thinking, when I was asked to join this panel and it was about real and false solutions, I really was trying to think of what I could offer to you all that would be helpful. And for me and for those of us at Indigenous Climate Actions, we truly believe that true climate solutions challenge the status quo and will center Indigenous sovereignty and leadership through Indigenous-led climate solutions. Solutions that maintain the systems of oppression that have got us into this situation are not going to be what we need to move forward in a good way. Real solutions reduce greenhouse gases at the source and do not rely on market-based mechanisms and non-market-based mechanisms. Climate policies like we're seeing today at the UNFCCC continue to be led by wealthy and influential forces that cause the very problems that we are in today. State and non-state actors ought to act with humility and practice honesty regarding climate solutions and be held accountable through justice mechanisms defined and led by Indigenous peoples. And I feel like I need to also quote my coworker, Rosie, here, because when I was reading through some of our materials, I felt like this would be something that folks would really enjoy. Capitalism tells us that land is only meant to be profitable, but the land is not something to be owned, controlled, or bought and sold. Land is a relative we are in relationship with. We say land back, but we see it not as a means to control, but as a first step in breaking free of the systems of oppression. A first step towards a balance of life, a life of balance that is once again built on care and reciprocity with the land, waters, and our other non-human kin.
Here at ICA, we are in opposition to these neoliberal trade agreements, market-based policies, and corporate techno-fixes aimed at protecting and subsidizing the extractive energy corporations, causing climate chaos. These, just to name a few, I mean, I feel like we've heard a couple here, but things that are pollution, carbon pricing, carbon market mechanisms, nuclear power, geoengineering, and other nature-based solutions that just tend to be expensive and unproven technologies. I encourage you to take a look at Hoodwinked in the Hothouse if you're looking to learn more about false solutions. So for me, I thought I would focus the majority of my presentation or talk on real solutions. So for me, real solutions for climate justice must be guided by principled practice, protect and be guided by Indigenous traditional knowledge, place-based experience, and public interest science. It must be holistic when we're talking about solutions. It must intertwine ecological and social harm. It must replace the economies of greed with economies of serving ecological and human need. Solutions must advance deep, direct, and participatory democracy rooted in local self-determination. And honestly, real solutions need to repair our relations with the earth and with each other. So for me, I thought I would talk about a couple experiences that I had and the way that I like to bring those experiences into not only the negotiations, but the way that I approach climate justice and climate change in general. So the first one in my mind is going out on the trap line. I've been very lucky to spend some time in my community when I was doing my master's with an elder. Don't tell him I called him an elder. A knowledge keeper, one would say. And we were really lucky to be able to spend time out on the land. And when we were out there and we were noticing these patterns of the animals and really getting to know the trapline areas, it began to make me realize that these projects, the green projects that we're seeing, need to be Indigenous-led because they're the ones that are going to be able to protect the land for future generations. They're going to know the places where it will be harmful to put projects and the places where it's going to protect the lands, the medicines, and the plants that we use to thrive and survive. I also like to bring up something called the NIBI gatherings or the water gatherings. They happen out in Treaty 3 territory in so-called Canada. And the reason why I bring that up as a solution is because that gathering is rooted in ceremony. And I feel like those pieces, that ceremonial aspect, when we're talking about water and we're talking about real solutions, is vital. It builds that connection to the land and to our teachings and to our culture that can then inform how we should be doing these solutions. I also want to talk quickly about the late Josephine Van Damen. Josephine was an amazing water walker, what we call a water walker. And when I was first invited to this panel and someone was like, we want you to talk about water, I was like, oh, I don't really know what I could talk about because it feels like such a lifetime ago that I was so lucky to participate in my very first water walk in 2009. And just so you know, the water walks, Josephine had walked all around every single Great Lake by herself. She carried a copper pail and an eagle staff and walked from about 3 a.m. And you know, as a teenager, I did not want to get up at 3 a.m. But we did, and we would walk until sundown. And it really was an honor to get that experience. So Josephine walked around the Great Lakes, which has a span of 4,530 miles, which is really long. And it also accounts for 21% of the world's fresh water. More than 30 million people rely on the Great Lakes for drinking water, including my family. That's 10% of the US population and 30% of the Canadian population. Yet, people who plan to bear children are advised not to eat any fish out of the Great Lakes due to the massive amounts of pollution in my territory. So, like I said, with a copper pail in one hand and a staff in the other, the late Josephine Van Damen, an Anishinaabe grandmother who I looked up to, took on a journey of a sacred walk. She traversed over 10,000 miles around each of the Great Lakes. She really is someone that we should be looking up to and embodying in our teachings. Her motto would be, just do it. And every time we'd be at those events and we'd be prepping and doing things, and everyone was always talking and taking their time and doing things, and she would just be like, just do it. Just go grab the pail and get going. Never mind all this extra stuff that's happening. And I feel like that advice is what the leaders and the negotiators and the state leaders need to hear. And I want to quote Josephine as well, because I feel like, she began in 2003, so I feel like the timing, 20 years since her experiences. So I will quote that. In our prophecies in the Three Fires Society, we are taught that water is very precious. If we could discontinue our negligence, we can change things around. That's why I'm really embodying the prophecy. You've heard walk the talk. This is why I walk. So for me, going out on those water walks and experiencing the land, you get to spend so much time out there, like I said, 3 a.m. to about 7 p.m., long days. You're not walking the entire time. There's a team with you. It's a joint effort, and it's really about raising awareness about the solutions and I really believe this being a solution. It was a water protection walk. We would give information to those that would stop and honk at us and be like, what are you doing? Why are you walking around the Great Lakes? We're walking around the Great Lakes to protect it, to protect those for future generations to be able to drink clean water and to be able to fish, hunt, and trap in their territories. And also to take that knowledge from building those relationships with those plants, the animals, the water, and all the non-human relatives in order to ensure that the solutions that are being negotiated here are going to be reflective of what we need on the ground. And I will end with just a few quotes from my mother, actually, because my mom was the one that brought me to these gatherings and has, you say forced. I was a teenager. Did you really want to go to these things? No. But I'm really glad that she brought me to these things. So one of the things for Anishinaabe people, and we truly believe this and try to embody it, is we are the water. The water carries the knowledge of our ancestors. It connects us to our ancestors in past generations. And water connects us to all life. So I encourage you, as you're going through these pavilions and these negotiations, remember Josephine Mandamin and just do it.
Yay! Thank you, JC. Appreciate you so much for giving us that beautiful, beautiful talk and being real about how it is when you're younger and just want to go and maybe just go swimming instead of do the work. Either way, we're still respecting that water, so it's super important. Our final speaker this evening, last but not least, is Tom B.K. Goldtooth. He's Dene and Dakota and is the executive director of the Indigenous Environmental Network, which incidentally is the oldest Indigenous-based and grassroots network working on environmental, energy, climate, and economic justice issues in North America, including the rights of Indigenous peoples. Tom has been the lead of the Indigenous delegation of IEN within the UNFCCC since COP4 in Buenos Aires, Argentina in 1998. Tom and IEN participated in the formation of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change in 2008. Tom has been awarded with recognition of his achievements throughout the past 32 years as a change maker within environmental, economic, energy, and climate justice movements. From his participation in leadership in the first National People of Color Environmental Justice Leadership Summit in 1991 in Washington, D.C., to the 2010 World Peoples Conference on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth in Cochabamba, Bolivia, and to the recent co-formation of the US-based Green New Deal Network and the United Frontline Table, and its people's orientation to a regenerative economy platform. He has been on the forefront of key moments fighting for systemic change. In 2007, Tom co-founded the Indigenous World Forum on Water and Peace, lifting up the spiritual, cultural values, and ethics of water policy. Tom initiated the first International Indigenous Conference of the Rights of Mother Earth in 2012 at the Haskell Indian Nations University and serves as a member of the Global Alliance of the Rights of Nature. Tom wrote the IEN Indigenous Principles of Just Transition as an organizing tool of using Indigenous original instructions as the foundation for building sustainable and healthy Indigenous communities. And lastly, Tom is the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2015 Gandhi Award, and in 2016 was presented Sierra Club's highest recognition, the John Muir Award. And that's maybe just a teeny bit of his bio that I wanted to share with you all. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Tom B.K. Goldtooth.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, the best is in Shle. Wota Kota Bashichi. How me dakyapi. Haetu de chante wishtea iyuha na pe to use apado. I greeted you in two languages. One is our Dene, Navajo. For you from Canada, I call ourselves the Southern Dene because we're related to the Northern Dene. And the other side is the Bedewakantawan Dakota. And I'm going to talk mostly from the perspective of our eastern fire of our Dakota, Ocheti Shikongwe, the seven council fires. A couple years ago, I asked permission from our women and our grandmothers where I lived to be able to speak to water. Where I come from in northern Minnesota, we have initiated a process of decolonization. Part of that is language restoration. And part of that is understanding that genesis of who we are. Because as what was talked about is also a process of colonization that happened over 500 years ago where I come from. A process by a society of people, not all those people, because they also committed atrocities against their own people from Europe. So who were these people that entered our shores and instituted a process that made us ashamed of who we are as indigenous peoples? A process of colonizing our spirit, a process of taking away our bundles, our sacred bundles that we hold, that is the heart of our ceremonies. A process also of, now the modern word is objectifying the woman, our woman. Now we have history exposing itself of the murder, the colonial murder of our women and our children. Finding our children buried, hidden from these residential schools of the government, but also the churches. We call that historical trauma. So we have to speak truth when we talk with people that don't understand, when we talked about the importance of our inherent relationships and our indigenous jurisprudence, our indigenous laws that we call our natural law. What happened when we got colonized? That included militarization, it included imperialism, it included all these things that caused the death of our people. And with that is historical trauma, psychologically, socially in our villages, but deep inside, like churning. The term I gravitated to learning more about is internalized oppression, that we oppress our own now. Someone that is trying to hold on to their traditions, to grow my hair and maintain long hair, to have ceremonies and be proud as Dakota, be proud as Dene Navajo. There are ones that say, who do you think you are? Who do you think you know what you're doing is hurting our people. We got to live the modern white man way now. Those things must be forgotten. So all this trauma is carved in when we use justice, a fight for justice, a fight for dignity. So it bears upon the trauma of our women. So where I come from, my children, I made a commitment to teach our children. Some of you know some of my boys and my daughters. But it's also to learn their place as a new generation coming up on who they are. And part of that has been lifting up the relationship to water. And where I come from, the women are the keepers of the water. Us men are the keepers of the fire. We have responsibilities like that. When we mention my sister, Josephine Madaman, in the Indian way, she's not my sister by blood, but she's my sister that we took each other as relatives. She's been part of our Indigenous Environmental Network. We took her to the World Water Forum in Mexico City. And she is a walker. She outwalked a lot of the younger people in the march down there for attention of the relationship to water, the spiritual. I want to talk in this couple minutes I have. Many of you remember the gathering in Standing Rock, North Dakota, Dakota Access Pipeline, the Ocheti-Shokomi Seven Council Fire gathering, and the visibility of that went all over the world. But one word came out of that, Mini Wichoni. It became a meme, Mini Wichoni. And that conveys what I wanted to share with you. It's about relationship. It's about what was talked about already. What does Mini Wichoni mean? I was taught what it means by women and men when I was just a little guy. And part of it is a story that I don't have time to fully share it. But when our women carry a baby, our baby is swimming inside the belly. And when that signs are there that that baby is ready to come into this world, the mother passes water, the passage of the water. So how is it that our people who were told to the world we were pagans, that we were uncivilized? That's what colonization said about us. But we understood life. And Mini Wichoni talks about the coming of life and the water that's flowing. Water is life. That's what that means and symbolizes the coming of life. Water is life, the coming of the baby. How can you explain that really, truly in English? It can really be purely told and told in Lakota, Dakota, Nakota. So these are things when we talk about relationship to water and the sacredness of water. And the stand there wasn't really about really the stand was about protection of that river. Imagine an industry that's going to ram a pipe underneath that river, not even asking permission. So that's what I wanted to share in that relationship. We initiated the program, very innovative, called Indigenous Water Ethics. I've worked for a number of years with some non-people, academic, that have been pushing water ethics to the water ministers of the world. Some of the institutions are up there. They rejected incorporating water ethics into water policy and water management. I could not understand that. I joined this movement to lift up the importance of water ethics and water management in the non-native water and the governance systems that live next door to our tribal communities up north. But it's something in the global south. There's policies that have no understanding on water and what I'm talking about. They're controlled by industry and privatization. So we have an initiative to lift up and align water ethics with indigenous traditional knowledge. That's how we talk about ethics in our relationship, through the knowledge that has been taught to us. So it's a difficult project because it also embraces acculturation and assimilation as one of the products of colonization that takes us away from who we are. Some of our relatives in Quito who have been removed away from the jungle, the Amazon, they're experiencing the loss of language. So now they're starting to look at what we went through to rebuild our communities and our relationship to the sacredness of water. Very important. The ethics of values becomes law, a law that does not understand who we are, don't understand the responsibilities of respect for life, for nature. We have a duty of responsibility on how we walk on the Mother Earth. Just one more minute if I can. When we're born, we're tied to our biological mothers through the umbilical cord. And with the baby, that flowing of water, that baby is being held. That cord is still there. There's a way that, and who cuts that cord? Who holds the baby? It's always been a woman. Now the hospitals, sometimes it's a man. We don't know what kind of hands and life that man has, catches that baby. But the umbilical cord is cut. Some of us save that. We save that and dry it up and we keep it, and that baby grows to be an old woman, an old man. They still have tucked away that memory of that umbilical cord. But my last words is that in our belief, when we say walking on the Mother Earth, how are you walking? How are you? How are you walking? How are you walking on the Mother Earth? Is that we're still tied to the Mother Earth. We have an umbilical cord to the Mother Earth that has never been cut. The colonizers understand something about us. In the Vatican dungeon, they have studied mysticism, and they know something on how the tribal people who still maintain this knowledge, whether it was the tribal people in Europe, there was an initiative to sever that in order to have dominance and power over governance of people and land and farmers and crops. That mentality has to change. It has to change. The water is the one that flows and heals and can wash that away. That's why when someone's sick, sometimes we have a water or a washing ceremony with cedar. The Great Lakes, with the Anishinaabe and the Bidawakantan, Dakota, we have cedar ceremony to wipe away all that heavy-duty stuff that makes us sick. So thank you very much, and Mitakie Owase, we're all related.
Hello, hello. Whew. Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much. As I've been sitting here and listening and making the connections to the stories, thinking about our people back home where I'm from too as well, so-called North Dakota and the so-called United States, where hydraulic fracturing is occurring, using millions and millions of gallons of water each frac job, flaring natural gas directly into the atmosphere, not even, it's a byproduct of the oil industry there. thinking about the poisons and the sicknesses and the cancers and the connections of water, of what we need. I'm thinking about my sister here, how she's been in the Amazon and now walks on dry riverbeds. I'm thinking about my sister here, how it's hard to be able to go out of her home without even breathing clean air or having clean water. I'm thinking about my brother in Australia, how the water's drying up, the water underneath the ground, where they also are doing fracking, where they're lying to people. I'm thinking about my amazing and excellent boss here, who I'm so privileged to work with because I've learned so much about the importance. This is why we come here, and a lot of people don't want to hear it. But you need to hear this because these stories are just a few. Imagine all of the other indigenous nations around the world. Imagine all the other indigenous peoples are here, have these stories. That water is being poisoned. And water is life. We need to wake up. We need to understand the importance of protecting life. Not only for us, but for the 7 generations ahead. We have to remember the 7 generations of where we come from so we know where to go. And I want you all to join me as we close out with this panel, with this one most important message that we have to these heads of states and the world leaders and the governments and the people that are here at this COP 28, where the climate crisis is exacerbated, where people don't have clean drinking water. Hear us. Water is life. Repeat after me. Water is life. Water is life. Water is life. Masikirat. Thank you.